Welcome to Beyond Classroom program. Today we are going to discuss the impact of climate on various aspects like impact of climate on environment, education, economy, health, agriculture, and there are so many other factors, and the focus will be on education. लोग ऐसा कहते हैं कि because of the climate change, now the children are facing more difficulty in learning, their efficiency is coming down. Not only that, they are not able to attend these schools. Schools are shut off, and we have seen during the winters the temperature conditions are so harsh that the schools are shut down, and we have seen more frequent heat waves, and because of heat waves again the schools are shut down. Then there are frequent floods, and floods again causing the shutdown of schools, and you see the impact of the pollution. And in Delhi especially, we have seen almost 15 days, 2 to 3 weeks, schools are closed on account of the pollution, and the pollution is again caused by the climate change. So there are so many other factors which are responsible for education, and the impact of climate is one of them. So today we will discuss the effect of climate change on education especially, but other factors also. So Prashant, my first question to you is that what are the factors behind the climate change and how this climate change is impacting in education?
Sir, climate change is a basically multi-dimensional change in entire Earth system. It involves change in atmosphere, it involves change in ocean, it involves change in lithosphere, all the domains of Earth system. And it is happening in a vicious way. Like for example, we are releasing greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases are causing global warming, and due to global warming, some changes are happening in every aspect of environment.
Right.
Cryosphere is melting, sea level is rising, ocean is getting acidified,
Right.
the mud flows are happening. All these changes, they are interacting in a very vicious way through positive feedbacks.
Right.
And that's why climate change is happening in an exponential manner. Means whatever has happened in last 10 years, in that same magnitude of change will happen in next 5 years or 3 years, and this duration of that change will keep on decreasing.
So today's discussion is inspired with a report which has been published by the World Bank, and that was published in April. The observations are that climate change is causing a deep impact on the education, especially in the children. And also the World Economic Forum has revealed the data that there are more frequent floods now, there are more frequent droughts now, there are more frequent heat waves now. In fact, as compared to 1960s, now the heat wave is 5 times more intense. So this World Bank report says when children, they study in the adverse climatic conditions, they are not able to perform. Their efficiency of learning has come down. Their interest in education are also losing. So climate as a factor, how you see in the education?
Sir, climate is impacting education system in multiple ways. First of all, due to climate change, the extreme weather events, as you were mentioning, sir, they have increased both in frequency and severity.
Right.
And these events cause damage to education related infrastructure. For example, when there is heavy rainfall or flooding, schools, roads, connectivity, all are distorted, all are disturbed. Second thing is, as you were saying, sir, due to increase in temperature, see, every organism has perfect performance in a particular temperature range, that is range of tolerance. And when temperature, chikungunya, and that is significantly reducing absenteeism of kids in the, increasing absenteeism of the kids in the school. Not only kids, even the teacher absenteeism that is increasing. So these are the ways climate change is impacting the education system.
Right. Anirudh, climate change has various elements. Some are natural factors, some are human-made factors. How you see the factors behind the climate change?
See, sir, if we see climate change, as you have rightly said, both natural and anthropogenic factors are there. Just in brief, if I say, we have seen, like when humans were not there, we have witnessed 5-time mass extinctions. And these mass extinctions, like last 5th mass extinction happened 66 million years ago, human were not there.
Right.
So it means we did not cause this. Natural factor caused this. And the natural factors like Milankovitch cycle, sunspot cycle, even large powerful volcanic eruption may be there, meteorite strike may be there. So these are the various natural factors. But today when we say that climate change, it's mainly attributed to the global warming, and that is mainly attributed to the rising concentration of anthropogenic greenhouse gases,
Right.
particularly carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide. These are three greenhouse gases which are principally called as the big three greenhouse gases.
Right. So the prime source becomes these gases, greenhouse gases, and the global warming is the main source which causing the
Today's climate change is mainly driven by global
mainly
warming.
by, but there may be some
Yes,
other
in the
factors
past
also.
we have seen climate change driven by cooling also, but today's climate change is mainly driven by global warming. But as you have already said earlier,
Right.
climate change does not mean only warming. Global warming is leading to the change in the environmental condition in lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere also. And because of this, what is happening, that some places extreme cold waves are happening, or the frequency of the cold wave is increasing, and some places the frequency of heat wave is also increasing.
Right.
So impacts are both ways, because it is impacting the overall environment.
World Economic Forum says that now there are 7 times more intense heat waves. In fact, the frequency also and intensity also.
That is the root cause for all the problems. Like as sir was also mentioning, that when we say climate change, what the climate change is doing, that extreme weather events frequency and intensity both is increasing.
Right.
Some has increased by 2 times to 3 times to 5 times. An example, if we see polar regions, as per various reports, if we see from 3 times to almost 6 to 7 times, the average temperature increase, right, is faster than the this average increase.
Right.
And because of this, the surrounding biota and as well as the other aspects are getting impacted.
Right.
And one of them, education also comes from the same area.
Right. So when we see education, as the World Bank is talking about, and also UN report, UNESCO report also talks about the climate change impact on the education. Especially it is children who are affected. And we know that these things we are even observing.
Yes.
When children are going to school, because of the extreme heat, sometime the schools are shut down. And during the floods again shut down. When there is heavy rain again shut down. Yes. Or maybe water logging has happened. So such frequent interruptions in the schooling, that is causing one impact. Secondly, when the climate changes are visible in our day-to-day life, in the way that we are using air conditioning. So children and even people, they have become very sophisticated. They are not used to of having that kind of the climatic variation effect. So how you see the current scenario of education and up to what extent it is impacted by the climate change, and what should be done?
See, first in nutshell, if we see impact of the climate change, we can divide them into 2 parts. What is the direct impact of the climate change, and one is the indirect impact of the climate change. Direct impact, as sir was mentioning, like if we see extreme weather events, like be it the wildfire, be it the heat waves, be it the cold waves, be it the sea level rise, be it the extreme frequency or intense frequency, both combining of the tropical cyclones. Because of this, the school infrastructure is getting damaged. Number 2, many a time in the disaster response, the same school infrastructure is used as a center for the local people to be gathered, to be given the disaster response support. So one is that problem there. Another problem is that the indirect impact is also happening. If we see the climate change, like crop damages are happening. Now, if the crop damages are happening, the people who are not having enough income opportunities, they are not willing to send their kids to such kind of activities. Number 2, they are pulling those students out, dropout ratios are increasing, and they will be asking them to employ some other places. Because of the flood conditions and because of the heat wave, such conditions, the migration is increasing. So the people who are studying in certain schools, accessibility has decreased over there.
Right.
B, infrastructure has decreased there. C, they themselves are not in a position to live there, so they are migrating to the other places. Displacement is increasing, migration is increasing. Now when they go to some other place, they themselves are not very sure how they are going to live there. So the education get impacted that way also. And along with this indirect impacts, like because of the average temperature increase, our physiological conditions, behavioral conditions are also getting impacted. If you see small example, now it is mainly overlooked, because of the average temperature condition increase and because of this loss of livelihood opportunities, domestic tensions are also increasing. We see domestic abuse there. Kids are being abused by sometimes the family members. One reason, because they don't have income opportunities. So that anger, that tension gets kind of an indirect impact of such kind of a surrounding conditions too.
रुचिका जी, आपके पास आऊँगा. How do you see climate diplomacy? Because the developed nations, they are the main sources for the global warming and the emission of the greenhouse gas. Yeah. And now the developing nations, they are actually suffering because the major population is here. So how do you see the this global diplomacy? Yeah.
So before talking about global diplomacy with respect to climate change, to add to the education points, some of the points like some things like we have observed, like in India especially, we have, and many poor countries like in Africa and all, there we have midday meal schemes, where we have Anganwadis and all. So that is a very lucrative factor for children to come to school, because that nutritional aspect is also being covered. But now that when you are closing the school, shutting down the schools, or using the schools as a rescue center, so that is also that the lucrative factor of having food there, meal there, and that is impacting the nutritional aapka jo hai na, that is nutrition. And initial few years are the formative years of a child's brain. So that is also getting impacted. And as far as like you were talking about, and sirs were also talking about that it has impacted the cognitive skills and all. So we have data. I would like to share some data, like there is a, like in Ecuador children who were exposed to extreme El Nino floods while in utero, they were shorter and performed worse on cognitive tests 5 to 7 years later. Even Indian statistics have shown that drought reduced children's mathematics and reading scores in rural Maharashtra by 4.1% and 2.7% respectively. Then similarly, sir, rainfall shocks in utero during the first 15 years of life in India has negative impact on vocabulary at age 5 plus mathematics and non-cognitive abilities at age 15. So it is really impacting education. Yeah. And as far as climate diplomacy, so climate change is a global issue, and we are living in a globalized world. So nobody can shun away from the responsibility. And as you have rightly said that the main reason or the cause behind has been the global north.
Right.
And right now the global south is suffering for it. And today, climate change is one of the major dimensions of diplomacy in the world, because this is a problem that majorly it is being faced by the developing countries or the global south, because they are victims to it, number one. They do not have the resources to deal with it. They do not have the technologies to deal with it. And all these things are in the hands of the global north. So now they are bargaining with them. That too at their own cost. So that is where the global south is very vulnerable.
Right.
And where now India is also a leading voice in the area of climate change. And India is taking many initiatives on the global platforms, be it your UN, FCCC, or be it your COP wale platforms mein aap baat kar lijiye. So India has taken many of the initiatives, like even we have taken our own initiatives, like International Solar Alliance is there. We have talked about aapka coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure and all. Those initiatives are there. And this is one of the factors which is also bringing many of the global south countries together, because this is a common fight for them.
Right.
So that has somehow shaped the diplomacy in the present times.
Yeah. Raj, coming to you, how this climate change is impacting the vulnerable section of the society? This is your area.
Sir, that is the most concerning part of the climate change, that climate change is not affecting everyone in a same proportion. In fact, the vulnerable are paying more prices of this climate change. And as ma'am has rightly mentioned, that they have no resources, and in collectivity we can say global south is facing the challenge of that. So there are various kinds of challenges are faced by them. If we see the literacy rate among the women, again they are already having a disparity in this literacy rate. If there is a climate change in the form of extreme form of flooding, amplified heat waves and all, so the first one to drop out from the school were the girl child. And that will create a disparity in education among the women who are already vulnerable. Similarly, there are tribals, and in tribal area, as Sir Prashant sir has rightly mentioned, that we have more destruction of the infrastructure. Now, infrastructure of school is destroyed in cities like Delhi due to climate change, and places like tribal areas. The tribal area will take lot of time for repairing or basically maintenance than Delhi. So, those people who are living in those tribal pocket will have to pay the price until the school building is intact. So that is another factor. And then when multiple climate change occur, it also induces some kind of displacement. So AP Singh sir has pointed out about the migration. So when you leave that particular place because of flooding or other form of climate change induced disaster, so what happens? Adjustment with the new setting is very difficult for a child. and they prefer to drop out and engage themselves into some economic activity rather than pursuing their education. So again, I would say ki, as you have pointed out, sir, ki the climate change major culprit are the developed country who have gone for industrial revolution and many other things, and now the price is paid by the vulnerable sections more. So that is what we can say on that.
According to this report of the World Bank, it's basically a research report, and it says that in Philippines, in 2022, last year, almost 21% schools were shut because of the frequent floods. And similarly in Pakistan, there were around 3.5 million children who were impacted by the floods. And in fact, we have seen in country India, especially in Delhi, we have been observing since last couple of years, when it is the period of heat wave, the schools are closed. When it is the rainy season, again the schools last year we have seen that most part of the North Delhi was flooded because of this rainfall, and that concentrated rain is because of the global temperature change.
Correct.
And then we also have seen how this pollution and extreme cold conditions, पहले तो हमारे समय हम लोग छोटे थे तो ये सब फैक्टर्स नहीं हुआ करते थे, है ना. देयर आर मल्टीपल रीजंस. एक तो ये फैक्टर हो गए. दूसरा, ऑन द अदर हैंड, कि वी एज ए ह्यूमन बीइंग, वी आर नॉट नाउ दैट मच स्ट्रांग बायोलॉजिकली टू सस्टेन दिस काइंड ऑफ द चेंज. तो वो भी एक फैक्टर हो रहा है. सो हाउ यू सी दिस कैन पोज ए थ्रेट इन द फ्यूचर. इनफैक्ट मैं आपको इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ क्योंकि इस बार UPSC सिविल सर्विसेज प्रीलिम्स का जब एग्जाम हुआ 16th जून को, टेम्परेचर इन दिल्ली वाज 44 डिग्री, 45 डिग्री, एंड मैनी स्टूडेंट्स दे टोल्ड दैट कि व्हेन वी वर अपीयरिंग इन द एग्जामिनेशन, especially in this second session when they were appearing in CSET, literally their mind was not that efficient.
Correct, sir.
Or they were facing problem. तो ये जो efficiency में impact आता है because of the temperature change, ऐसा लोग बताते हैं कि अगर 10 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड टेम्परेचर नॉर्मल से ऊपर चला जाता है तो 25 डिग्री एफिशिएंसी कम हो जाती है.
राइटली सेड.
सो हाउ डू यू सी दिस कि इन फ्यूचर और क्या चैलेंजेस आ सकते हैं?
सर, ऑन अ सिमिलर लाइन एक्चुअली, व्हेन यू हैव राइटली मेंशन्ड दैट इफ देयर इज अ टेम्परेचर राइज और इफ देयर इज अ सीवियर विंटर और इफ देयर इज अ सीवियर हीट वेव, दिल्ली इज ऑलरेडी अ हीट आइलैंड, and when the temperature rises, your cognitive ability are adversely impacted in that. So your performance basically in schooling or learning is slightly affected. We have report of ESSER, which is conducted by Pratham NGO, that regularly point out that there is a decline in efficiency of the student in their mathematical calculation and their basically reading comprehension. So adverse impact is going to be having everyone included, but vulnerable section, as I again will say, कि they have more to pay. Why? Because affluent section have ways and means to come out from it. They can convey to the school management to install air condition or some other ways, but the poor person don't have any choice, so they are paying more price in this regard.
Anirudh, on the one hand, the report says that there is a lot of dropout among the children because of this climate change, but what I see with invention of the online classes and integration of the technical things in the education, maybe that once the conditions are not good or not favorable, so the schools themselves are transforming or changing from the offline mode to the online mode. So don't you see that this can also be the reason in the dropout? And
in fact, no, sir, but what you have suggested actually shall be taken as a part of adaptation strategies. Like example, when we say impact, one thing is we had to understand that the climate change is a reality. It's no longer a kind of that discussion where whether it is there or not there. Now, if we had to address the impact of the climate change, we can divide three strategies, or two mainly. One is a mitigation and one is adaptation. One, we can focus on controlling those factors which are causing the climate change, because if the climate change is there, no matter what you do, you will witness the adverse impact on not only education but all aspects of the life. Like we have seen, if we have extreme flood events, if we have extreme drought events, what we can do in that? If the flood is there, the entire area is flooded, what we can do much of that? So one is arresting the climate change by mitigating the greenhouse gases emission and other controlling factors to be controlled. What you were saying is principally an important part of adaptation strategy. Like example, if the school infrastructure is damaged, and by the time the school infrastructure would come up, there has to be continuity in the education, and that continuity can be offered by the online medium, like we have seen in Delhi. So what has started happening here, that when you have this winter, when Delhi witnesses the smog condition because of the Delhi's peculiar location, so because of the meteorological condition plus pollution, when the schools to be shut down, Now what we do, we come up with the online classes.
Yeah,
So
even the
it
government will come out with the instructions that the schools can provide the online education, but they cannot open the schools for physical means.
So that's becoming an adaptation study. We are adapting over there so that the studies do not stop. What we need to actually, we can add into that is, what the world is missing as of now is that loss and damage is a reality, and for that we had to have a global level and regional and national level loss and damage fund. And these loss and damage fund especially attributing to the vulnerable section of society.
Right.
As Raj sir was saying, I would say we call it in the climate as a climate injustice. Somebody would say how the climate can do injustice. But climate injustice has a three important ingredient. Number one, the climate change is caused by the people who are not the one who are most affected by the climate change. So the greenhouse gases emission, like example, take an example of India. India has 18% of the total population in the world, but we are only having 5% accumulated greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So we have not contributed in the climate change, but India is one of the vulnerable countries to the climate change.
Right.
Now you were talking about like Pakistan, Guam, Philippines. If you read any report, you will find that the most negative impact is on the poor countries, developing countries, because they don't have a adaptation abilities over there. So one aspect of the injustice, प्रॉब्लम उनको हो रही है जिन्होंने प्रॉब्लम कॉज नहीं की है, और जिन्होंने प्रॉब्लम कॉज नहीं की है उनके पास कैपेबिलिटी भी कम है, सो दे हैव अ लेस कैपेबिलिटी टू एडजस्ट टू दोस प्रॉब्लम. तो कैपेबिलिटी के लिए उनको शेयर करना पड़ेगा. द पीपल हु हैव गॉट बेनिफिट out of those resources, they have reached a development level, they had to create a kind, they had to contribute. Theory में तो है loss and damage fund, but उसके लिए एक significant contribution की जरूरत है, जिसको हम दो पार्ट में डिवाइड कर सकते हैं कि एक तो हमें एजुकेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को रिजिलियंट बनाना पड़ेगा, और अगर रिजिलियंस काफी नहीं है, रेजिलिएंट काफी नहीं है, तो हमें कंटिन्यूटी के लिए जो आप अडाप्टेशन का एक पार्ट है इसको भी, तो एक रेजिस्टेंस रेजिलियंस के साथ साथ एक कंटिन्यूटी में भी कंट्रीब्यूट करना पड़ेगा.
Yes. Prashant ji, coming to the health sector, because climate change that resulting into several floods, and floods resulting into the waterborne diseases, and diseases again resulting into the lack of the school attendance, and we have seen the like अभी बात कर रहे थे चिकनगुनिया है, या फिर we have here the mosquito breeding है, और ये डेंगू तो एक बहुत ही कॉमन सी डिजीज हो गई है यहाँ पर. So इस तरह की जो प्रॉब्लम्स हो रही हैं, so how do you see the impact of climate change on health?
Sir, climate change, as sir was saying, it is impacting entire health system, same like education system, in multiple ways.
Right.
On one side, health infrastructure is getting vulnerable, like floods and extreme weather events, cyclones, they cause damage.
Heat stroke आएंगे तो लोग बीमार पड़ेंगे, एक्सट्रीम कोल्ड होगी तो लोग बीमार पड़ेंगे, ज्यादा बारिश होगी तो लोग बीमार होंगे, पॉल्यूशन बढ़ेगा तो लोग बीमार होंगे. मतलब ये जो इंटर रिलेशनशिप है, bad means impact on health is directly causing the impact in education.
Sir, one more thing is there, like due to climate change, in certain parts of India, the incidence of early marriage has increased. Bihar, Odisha, in these states, and early marriage leads to increased maternal mortality rate as well as infant mortality rate. So that has also increased in India because of climate change related things. Third thing is, sir, climate change and crop failures, they negatively impact immunity. And loss of immunity means the incidence of diseases that will increase. Like you can take the example of Chamki fever in that area. So it's related to direct impact of global warming as well as it is related to the vector-borne thing. So, sir, as a whole, there are multiple channels through which climate change will be impacting the health system.
Right. Ruchika ji, coming to you, pollution is another factor which is again related to the climate change, because rise of the carbon dioxide, that is the basic source of the global warming, or maybe the other greenhouse gases, and somewhere there is a relationship with the human behavior, means anthropogenic sources. So this factor on the pollution, how you see this pollution is causing the impact on education?
Sir, the very good example is Delhi itself. Whenever we have pollution holidays. Unfortunately, we are having pollution holidays across metros in the world, which is very unfortunate.
And world में बहुत सारे ऐसी cities हैं,
yes, sir.
which are very
पहले
badly
Beijing
impacted.
वगैरह में भी था, but now they have controlled it. So it is definitely when the children are not going to school, it is going to definitely impact. Second thing is when you have pollution, you have health advisories from the government that don't go out, don't go for playing, don't go for jogging. So that is also in a way like child is not able to go for the physical activities. So that is also where the child is impacted. Not only child, every one of us.
Everyone is impacted.
So the pollution itself, and then pollution has a very negative impact on our psyche. When you see everywhere smog and you are just sitting inside the room, it is having a very sulky kind of a feeling. So that is also something where you are more depressed. A lot of depression is happening in the world because of this pollution, and especially among children. Because children, this is the age where you go out, you play, you enjoy, but you are just stuck in a room.
You are forced to remain inside.
Yes. So these are some of the problems. And to add to Raj sir's thing, he was talking about tribal areas. Education is impacted, especially in the tribal areas. And it has a very deep concern also, because many of our tribal areas are also having LWE problem, left-wing extremism problem. And we have one of the solutions that we talk about in LW areas is education. So it becomes a very vicious cycle that you are not able to give them education, no awareness. So definitely LWE is gaining a lot of aapka jo hai, budding ground there. So education is very important, because at the bottom of every problem we talk about education, we talk about awareness. And as far as women are concerned, especially girl child, what we have seen is after attaining adolescence, many of the girls are not being sent to school because of hygiene factors. But now if you will not be having clean water in your schools, or if you are not going to have 24/7 supply in the toilets in the washroom, so definitely many of the girls would drop out. And we are seeing cases of water wives in Maharashtra and all. So these kind of exploitation in a way would happen amongst the women folk also.
Right. Raz, how do you see the education, this impact of climate change on other socio-economic factors?
Sir, as Prashant sir has mentioned, ki climate change has a multi-dimensional impact on every sections of the society.
Right.
No one is basically free from any kind of impact caused by the climate change. So again, we have already discussed briefly on the vulnerable section. Just to add some data perspective to it, the tribals in India have 59% literacy rate. They are already lagging behind. And then if we talk about equitable education under the national education policy also, this climate change is vulnerable, make them more vulnerable. Same goes with women. They are 65% in terms of literacy. And there is also another set of vulnerability. Ma'am was talking about the health, sir was also talking about the health. There is also a mental health issue which is caused due to your lockdown imposed due to the climate change, especially the pollution induced lockdown. And United Nations has mentioned that it causes more increase in domestic violence, as AP Singh sir was pointed out. They named a term also for that called as shadow pandemic during the COVID-19 crisis, where more involvement in the household affairs has created more mental pressure, and that comes out in the form of violence against children, against the family members. Then we have also the economic factor. Climate change is causing most of the people losing out their job. And when they lose out their job, their per capita income or their income basically earning is going to affect, and that is going to have a ripple effect in other areas.
Yeah, also we see that climate change causes floods.
Correct,
then
sir.
floods causes the shortfall in the agricultural production.
Correct, sir.
And there can be a production shortfall, and the purchasing power reduces. That is one side. Similarly on heat waves. During that time also many crops are not able to survive. Frequent fires in the forest are causing again the problem.
Recent Uttarakhand fire is an example.
We have
sir.
seen.
Correct, sir.
And this fire incidence has drastically increased even in the developed countries. Recently also we have seen in California forest the fire is going on.
So as like economic aspect you were talking about, here also the most vulnerable section, like street vendors, daily आपके जो hawkers हैं sir, daily wage earners, and they are most impacted by climate change. Like we have seen very recently when we were going to heat wave in Delhi, so there was an advisory from the LG of Delhi that during afternoon time nobody is going to employ the laborers who are working outside. So their economic impact is huge.
Yes.
They are going to be impacted deeply by this climate change.
What I see that the global climate change is also having certain positive aspects in terms of when we have certain threat or fear, we try to invent the environmental friendly technology. Like now people have started constructing greenhouses. The tree plantation has become important, and the awareness among the people has started to come to consume less water or to save water or to go for the environmental friendly techniques. There are the energy appliances which are less energy consuming, energy efficient. Now we are going for the green hydrogen, we are going for the solar power, we are going for the other renewable energy sources which are done under pressure, but these are the positive outcome of the climate change, and the impact can be minimized. We have one question asked by Archraj Rathor. Laws are there to control the pollution but not properly checked and implemented by the government authorities. How you see, Anirudh?
It's more of a statement rather than a question, but yes, definitely. Every country has so many laws, and we do have, like example, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. We have so many, like example, ozone depleting substances related rules. So we do have laws, but eventually it has a two facets over there. Implementation, but when it comes to the climate change concept, in the climate change, it's not a local phenomena. Pollution, we can divide into two parts. One is a local pollution and one is a global pollution. In the global pollution, like we say, transboundary context is there. If something is being done in one country, you may not be able to prevent it because it's beyond your control there. For that matter, example, greenhouse gases. Like I was saying, that India is a vulnerable country despite India having only 5% share in the global greenhouse gases accumulated in the atmosphere, which is causing the climate change.
Right.
So similarly, if we talk about the persistent organic pollutant, we talk about the ozone depleting substances. So it's not about very low, but that's a normal point is there. Yes, we do have laws. Like example, Subramaniam committee recommended that we do have many laws, but what we need is a dedicated mechanism to implement those environmental laws. So yes, on that part of a specific question, we do need to have an environmental law management authority so that we can implement those laws. And number two, since we have many laws into the different areas, a kind of a little coherence is also missing.
Just to add one more point in that, again, law are there for child marriages also, against the child marriages, but child marriages is going on.
It's
so there is
happening.
So there is some responsibility from the point of view of citizen.
Yeah,
also,
this is where I wanted to come. Yes. It's not the only government which is responsible or they have to enforce it. But yes, there are laws, but ultimately we have to follow.
Correct, sir. But that is what important factor
so
is.
Again, this education comes into the picture.
Education is important.
Prashant ji, आपके पास from civil services mains examination perspective point of view, how do you see this climate change and its impact on the various sectors? This area is an important for the exam?
Sir, it is very important. Two types of questions may be asked from this section. One is the causal side of climate change. Why climate change is happening, what are the areas which are affected by climate change, and the second thing is how climate change is impacting different sectors. Like last year, there was a question in mains examination, discuss the impact of climate change on food security in in tropical countries of the world. In prelims also, they asked about the question about peatlands of Congo Basin. So in prelims as well as mains, questions are coming from climate change area. And when we talk about climate change, two systems are very important. One is atmospheric system and second is ocean. So there is possibility that they will be asking questions about like ocean circulations, AMOC, sea level rise or coastal ecosystems, how they are impacted due to sea level rise. So in last 10 years, every year at least two questions were asked in the mains examination from these areas.
And 2 years back, there was question in paper 2, international relations, about India's climate diplomacy. So they are, so urban flooding पे आ चुका है सर, पेपर 1, 2, 3 तीनों पे आया हुआ है.
Yeah, Anirudh, do you see any area important?
Climate change, it has a whole dimension, so it has to be covered in that way. Like the student should be focusing on per se understanding of the climate change. B, the various international conventions, protocols, the development which has happened at the international level and as well as the national level. Example, one question is due to be asked, what are the measures taken by the Indian authorities vis-a-vis the climate change direction? Example, so many programs are there, so ranging from the example national clean air program, or if we talk about the ozone depleting substances, then we say national cooling action plan is there. If we see mobility, transport, then e-vehicle promotions. So there are many aspects will be there. Example, movement to the renewable sources of energy. So that is one. But specifically, students should prepare the questions on the specific impacts, like climate change vis-a-vis like food security, climate change vis-a-vis health aspect, climate change vis-a-vis agricultural area, climate change versus right marine ecosystem, climate change and sea level rise, climate change in Himalayan ecosystem, climate change in Western Ghats. So like that also a small dimension. Many times a student find a shock in this way because they have studied the topic in totality, but they miss that specific nuances of a particular area. Like example, we talk about the climate change impact on Himalayan ecosystem.
Right.
So here they sometimes may find it that what is more pertinent, what is more relevant to the Himalayan ecosystem. So that dimension has to be kept.
Talking about holistic dimensions, so they have asked an essay also. So essay was alternative technologies for a climate change resilient India. So the whole aspect of climate change, whole aspect of technologies, be it your social technologies, be it your environmental technologies, all kind of technologies you can inculcate in this essay. So you have to prepare from all the angles.
तो दोस्तों जो आज का ये डिस्कशन था ये इसलिए लिया गया क्योंकि एक तो जो वर्ल्ड बैंक की रिसर्च रिपोर्ट है उसके कारण हमने इस टॉपिक को उठाया, दूसरा जो यूनेस्को की रिपोर्ट थी एंड दैट वाज क्लाइमेट चेंज इम्पैक्ट ऑन एजुकेशन, तो इस वजह से इसको डिस्कशन में हम लेकर के आए। और नट सेल में हम बात अगर कहें तो जो डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज हैं उनके जो क्रियाकलाप पास्ट में रहे हैं, दोज आर बिकमिंग द हिंड्रेंस फॉर द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज। अब हम जो अभी जो फेस कर रहे हैं डेवलपिंग नेशंस या फिर अंडर डेवलप्ड नेशंस, was mainly because of the global warming caused by the greenhouse gas emissions और वो large scale emissions done by the developed nations, global north की जो बात हम करते हैं। अब उनके impact देखिए जरा, उनका तो development हो गया 20 साल पहले, 30 साल पहले, 50 साल पहले, and the amount of the greenhouse gases which they have added in the environment, that has resulted to the rise of the global temperature और उस global temperature की वजह से पूरा environmental phenomena disturb हो रहा है। There is rise in sea level, there is increase of the frequency of floods, rains, droughts, not only that, intensity भी बढ़ गई। अब कोई बीमार पड़ेगा तो उसकी सोर्स ऑफ इनकम कम होगी, बच्चे बीमार पड़ेंगे उनका एजुकेशन लेवल कम होगा, जब एजुकेशन लेवल कम होगा तो डेफिनेटली जो कंट्रीब्यूशन होना चाहिए था सोशल कंट्रीब्यूशन वो नहीं हो पाएगा, इकोनॉमिक कंट्रीब्यूशन नहीं हो पाएगा। तो देयर आर सो मेनी अदर फैक्टर्स विच आर डिपेंडेंट ऑन द क्लाइमेट चेंज एज वेल एज डिपेंडेंट ऑन द ह्यूमन कॉज फैक्टर्स। अब कुछ पॉजिटिव चीज़ें ज़रूर हुई हैं, हमने बात भी की थी कि दिस टेक्नोलॉजी इन्वेंशन इज ऑल्सो बिकॉज ऑफ द फोर्सफुल कंडीशंस and now the entire world is concerned about the climate change. So let us put together, plant more trees, consume less carbon dioxide or the other greenhouse gas emitted substances so that we pollute less and we minimize the impact of climate change. Thank you very much. I hope this in this discussion you find useful for your exam and study and your knowledge. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.